Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Zoom Live. I'm your host, Vanati, and in this session, we're going to talk to the founder and CEO of Kregzo. Kregzo is one of the fastest growing business community based platform that helps entrepreneurs through the following critical things. It helps them connect them with some of their early adopters, with investors, influencers, mentors, etc. It helps them validate their business ideas or validate their product by doing some market research for them. And guess what? Some of the entrepreneurs even get themselves find a team with the community of Craigzo. I thought these were all brilliant, and I'm so excited to talk to Nitin today. And Nitin himself is an award-winning entrepreneur who has mentored over 70 plus startup founders from across the globe. And here's the best thing about Nitin, which the community says, is he is somebody who is known to turn nothing into something. Thank you so much for being here, Nitin. I'm so excited for today's session.
Well, thank you for having me. That's quite a bio. I don't know when you got a chance to speak to the community, but yeah, that's impressive.
I spoke to one from the community and I take her word for it. So I trust her for what she said. And
Okay.
Nitin, before we jump into in detail about how Craigzo manages to do the things that I just said, can you tell us a little bit about what a business community is or what a startup community is and what is the value proposition it adds to a society at large?
Right. So a startup community is mostly founded or is a collection of visionaries, the way we look at it. These are the people who saw the problems within the society and kind of figured out a solution to bring it to so that not just for the profit, but actually for the use of the society or advancement of the society. So whenever we talk about a startup or a startup community, we don't normally look at the profit margins. We always look at that is it what the society or the people need, because there's always a big differentiation when it comes to when we speak to people, is that this is a kind of a product or a business which is good to have, but this is something which I need to
Right.
go to the next step. So that's what a startup community actually brings forward in the market or towards the advancement of society.
Beautiful. And I do know that Craigzo identifies its community members as creators, explorers, and game changers. Would you care to tell us a bit about what these segments are? They all sound very interesting.
Right. So when we started in the market, we didn't want to be just a startup community. We wanted to take a step forward and look at how can we build that ecosystem around the world, which actually helps creators globally to make their ideas reach the least of a person or the last person in the queue waiting to hear from them. And that's why we decided let's build an ecosystem instead of building a startup community. So, like I said, startup community is mostly with founders, visionaries, people who want to make something out of it. The moment we plug ecosystem in it, ecosystem brings in the people who would actually be there as your customers, will be there as your early adopters, or people who are gonna listen to you and give feedback at the right stages. Ecosystem involves everything from government leadership to private companies, public companies, startups, universities, and freelancers to even your housewives at times, right? So this is what an ecosystem for us means. And when we started this ecosystem, we created a beautiful segment here. We said we have three customer bases. We're going to target creators. Creators are someone who are visionary, a startup founder, someone with an idea, or someone who already is in the market with their businesses. Those are our creators. Then we said game changers. Game changers are interestingly in US when you look at Silicon Valley, they're normally called startup founders as game changers. But when we looked at this MENA market and the Indian market, we realized that we have an abundance of founders already, but people who can actually direct them in the right direction, like mentors or investors, are pretty much comparatively very low. And the ratio is just about right or a bit less than what it's supposed to be. So we call them game changers. They come, they give advice for 10 minutes, 30 minutes, or they invest, which kind of changes the direction a startup goes forward or helps them pivot or scale faster. These are our game changers, and they have been a beautiful help to for us also to help us grow. And then that's where our main segment comes, explorers. Now these are the people who are just looking to for an opportunity. They can be students, freelancers, they can be your 9 to 5, anyone and everyone. They are your customers. In more than opportunity, they want to know what exactly is happening in the startup world or what's happening in the tech world. when you say AI, when you say blockchain, for portion of the world, it's still a bubble out there, and they have no idea what it is. So they want to understand it. They want to know what exactly is happening. So they get to be part of our ecosystem, and they get to learn, adapt. And what we have seen a trend is the moment they look at 10 ideas of their interest, they end up starting the 11th one. So it kind of creates that wave in the market that, hey, today I'm just learning, I'm just understanding. Tomorrow I have an idea which can solve this need, and now I'm a creator. And your explorers are your creators are also your explorers. They're learning every day. Your game changers, mentors. You are an explorer, Andy. So this is where our explorer comes. Most of it is from a pirate thing because we love how the pirates was explorer, creators, game changers. But yeah, this is
Yeah.
where our community surrounds around.
I had some questions lined up for you, but before I jump into the question, I really have to ask you, how did you go about building an ecosystem? I mean, from the way you narrated it, a startup community does have a significant difference from what a startup ecosystem is. Can you tell us why did you go about this? What made you do this, and what made you actually think that it is possible to build an ecosystem?
Well, startup communities are there across the globe from small cities to big cities as well as in countries, right? And yet, the biggest problem in the world, or I wouldn't, sorry, the biggest problem is not this, but one of the core problems in the startup world is 9 out of 10 startups still fail. This was the trend back in 2010, back in 1995 or 2000 as well. And today also it's the same number which follows. And when we looked at this as a crux of a problem, what we realized is, hey, startups are there, they're coming with brilliant ideas, they're doing the right steps at most of the times, but there's no ecosystem to help them grow. So differentiation between and community ecosystem, that's where we come in because an ecosystem is actually there to act as a catalyst for a community or for a startup world to grow. And if you're part of a startup community, but there's no support from a leadership side, or there's no support from a government side, or even there are no customers in that. So you're just running like every other person and trying to sell your product. But the moment I plug all this in an ecosystem, then you have the right resources at the right time, and you can leverage them to grow. So that is where we looked at it, and that's how we create a differentiation.
That is brilliant. And to put what you said into context, let's assume that I have a big idea. I think it could change the world. Let's even assume that I probably have a few resources who can work with me in building this idea and making it into a reality. But where do I begin? What are the first two, three steps? What is the nth step? What do I do from my idea to making it a reality? How can a startup ecosystem help me?
Well, the first step we always talk about whenever someone says, I have a huge idea. So we understand, fine, maybe the kind of idea you have is a $100 billion industry out there in the market. You're targeting only a 5% of it. So again, you have a good amount of addressable market. All those are narratives which are correct, which are working well for you. Right? And it's a brilliant idea. Amazing. But did you speak to the customer? Because that is a problem which you're trying to address, but is your solution the right solution, or the way you're creating a solution, is it going to be the right product market fit for the end customer who's going to use it? Because one way you can actually grow is raise investment, increase your valuation, and then ta-da, after a year or 3 years you're a $1 billion company, maybe after 5 years. But what about the reason you're creating this product? Who's going to buy it? That's your end customer. So we kind of, the first step we look at is, let's get your idea validated. When we say validate, the major steps to it, it's not just simply talking to a customer getting feedback. We look at different angles. How much are they willing to pay? Are they even willing to pay? So Apple built an iPhone. Everyone realized there's a need for a phone cover, and you have an amazing new concept of phone cover. Amazing. I love that phone cover. But is it something I'm going to pay for it, or is it something? If I have that phone cover, it's going to look nice on my phone. So those kind of differentiations, how much customer is going to pay, how many of them are willing to pay out of a segment of 100, let's say 200, and what is your niche? We look at this in terms of validation. Once your idea is validated, then we work on the growth model, business model, and more important, the scalability. The speed in the startup matters, right? Because
Right.
competitors are coming up. So that is where we look at the next steps.
Okay. So basically, you're saying your idea might look like the best idea to you. Your friends might support it, your family might support it, and somebody who does not like you may say, "Ah, that's going to fail." But the real judge of your idea is the market, is the customers, and we will be able to help you find the real answer from these customers itself, is what you're
Right.
saying. Amazing. And so that brings me to my next question. Assuming that I am somebody who works in a corporate job, 9 to 5 job, but I want to become an entrepreneur. I do know that I have the business blood in me. I don't necessarily have an idea or anything, but I just have the encouragement and I have the passion to do it. What do I do then? Except for come back later with an idea.
Well, it completely depends on your drive. It completely depends on your drive. Do you have a drive enough that you're able to, as a 9 to 5 resource or an employee, do you want to take the remaining 6 hours you get with your family or yourself at home? You want to take those 6 hours out and focus on your business and follow that route that you're doing your business as well as your job. And when the business grows, you are ready to quit? Or you one of those people who are going to risk it all and quit your 9 to 5 and just go in the business. So that is completely on an individual drive. One of the pieces of advice I got in an early stage, I think it was in uni, right when I graduated, and I was chasing an idea and situation at home just kind of not wasn't that good financially. And my dad told me to take a job for a few years and then do a business. And I was sitting with an investor and who was willing to invest. I had a letter of intent from the investor, and I just put this out to him. And it was just one single line. He said, if you're confused between job or startup, go for the job. Startup cannot be done with a with a confused heart or a half-heartedly. You want to do it, you want to create the next big thing in the market, you have to give it your all, and still your all wouldn't be enough. So that is something, it comes to an individual. I've seen a lot of people who can do it, but then there are a lot of people who need that focus, who need that time purely dedicated to the business.
Awesome, awesome. And the third scenario is where, I mean, this sounds a lot like interrogation, but I promise you that the next set of questions are not going to be like this. I'm very curious about it, so I want to pick your brain on that. So, assuming that I am a business, I am launched, and I'm also profitable.
Right.
So, at this point, do I have anything to gain from being a part of a community? Because I launched it without a community and I am staying profitable. At this point, what do I have to gain from a community? Why should I be a part of it?
Well, a lot more actually, because see, one of the biggest mistakes founders or startups who are successful in the market is they don't look back or they don't look at the next competitor coming up. For them, it's how the kids, and that's why you've realized that a kid from somewhere across the world saw what you're doing, realized that it can be served in the market they are sitting at, and they start that in a different concept in a different way, and it exceeds your market in the next few years. But more important to that is also if you're already successful in the market and you've launched, it's not just the competitors you got to watch out for, but it's what you can give back to the community. So one thing we always ask, like Zoho, for example, why is Zoho creating schools in small villages? Why is Zoho teaching or training students of villages who can't afford school, and they're hiring them? Because it's your biggest impact. What is the end goal? Is to create products or is to create a world where the society keeps advancing, right? So if you're already successful, then I would rather request you that so our community can give you B2B leads. It can give you access to a market which is not right now you're serving. It can open different contacts, connections, X, Y, Z. But more importantly, give back to the people who are still starting. Why do you want to see that same struggle which a founder is going through, which you went through? If today I went through that struggle, and if there's a founder who's going through similar struggle, I would rather help my resources so that they don't suffer and it becomes easier for the next generation. So yeah.
All right.
I
So
hope it makes
start as
sense
a business.
to
Sorry.
I hope it makes sense to people who are listening, and I hope it answers your question.
It does, because even though you've made a profitable business, at the end of the day, down the lane, it might feel like it's okay to you to make this amount of money from your business now, but down the lane, we all want to do something that is that's bigger than us and that's more beautiful and that will add to the society. So create that value and impact to the society by being a part of a community,
And look at
even when
the
you're.
current scenario. pandemic came, COVID came, nobody could have predicted this. Most of the businesses failed. People who were able to succeed were either the ones who adapted to the market scenarios or who were able to leverage their network. So that is something which a community can always offer.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Community across the world, different communities, not just business
Exactly.
community, even
Yeah.
the smaller ones. Even if you're working in a company, that company becomes a community for you. The
Right.
place
Yeah.
you live in becomes a community for you. Makes sense.
Exactly.
And yeah, it can be a support system to you. Amazing. And can you put all of these things together in a better context by giving us an example of a company or a brand that worked with Craigzo and came out, launched a product or launched a business or expanded its business or anything like that? A real time scenario of a business working with
Yeah,
Craigzo.
okay, there are quite a few, so I'll nitpick on a few of them. I hope the committee members are okay with that, not mentioning all. A simple example would be right in the beginning of the pandemic in Feb 2020, one of the startups from one of the SMEs from Delhi actually came to Dubai to set up their base of operations and things like that. Within a span of a month, because we're part of the ecosystem, the committee members came forward. They got five contracts within a span of a month through the community, all were B2B. Three of them were government and high paying contracts. So for an SME who's starting their operations for the first time in the MENA region, I think that was kind of an achievement not just for us but for the community as well. Because someone just comes, hey, I'm coming to Dubai or I want to set up my business there, and instantly, what do you do? This is what I provide. These are services I offer in the community. Like these are the people I know who will use the resources or services, and we was like bam, 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 connections done, and collaboration is happening. That was on an SME angle, and then on a startup angle, we saw a startup from Colombia who's launching an edutech platform and wanted to speak to early adopters, wanted to gain early adopters, and more importantly, actually want to validate their business idea. She came to the platform within a span of 2 weeks. She was working with Roche as well on that front. And there were around 40 different student entrepreneurs, or sorry, students were able to help this entrepreneur, not from one university, from multiple universities, different backgrounds from engineering to business to marketing, who were able to look at EdTech platform as the next generation needed and came forward, supported her, gave her feedback. Interestingly, out of the 40, she ended up having around 38 to 37 early adopters who were willing to wait for her to launch the product and are already even now helping her in the current beta stage of the product. So they're literally working with her at this stage. And the last was not, and not the least, obviously, but a founder from Mumbai, uh, mechanical engineer, design mechanical engineer, working on a air purifier you can keep in your balcony, just to I don't know how it was just a crazy idea that COVID is spreading, and I think it's also the air which carries on the virus. So I'm going to keep a air purifier out in this in my balcony, which is going to ensure next to my AC and everything else, so that air gets purified. I was like, okay, makes sense, but we don't know how you're going to do it. I can't offer engineering expertise myself. The people on the platform who can leverage, and he built his own design, everything else, and then wanted the product. And obviously parts for any purifier for a student during lockdown, it was in July August 2020, would be very difficult to come. And suddenly a committee member from Hyderabad, actually, who runs a 3D design company, asked him to share the prototype. They signed all the NDAs, everything was done in a secure manner. And in July in India 2020, when everything is under lockdown, they managed somehow deliver an entire 3D printed design, a prototype version of that AC purifier for him to test it out, show the results, and gain investment. I think that would have been one of the proudest moments for me, because when he's launching that thing and portion of those filters are launched, it's actually helping people. It's not
Oh,
just a business, but it's also actually helping people. So
yeah.
that's where we look at the community strong points.
Yeah, that's a wow moment actually. And
Yeah.
one thing I notice is Nitin, we talk very easily about early adopters, how Craigzo connects businesses with early adopters and all of those things. But I do know that one of the biggest challenge when you're a startup, when you have a product or when you have a built product is to reach out to those first few customers who are ready to pay you. That's,
Yeah,
I mean, I have seen businesses just die even after having built the product and everything, just die because they couldn't get those just first few people, first 10 or 20 people. So
right.
that is an incredible value proposition that a business would get out of a startup ecosystem.
Thank you.
Yeah, and
Um,
yeah, go ahead.
Very go on.
One more thing is, I mean, you might know an influencer. You might think, okay, this mentor would work well for me. I should talk to them. I should learn something from them. There is always an initial inhibition as to how do I say, like this awkward moment of writing an email, not knowing whether you will even get a response or not. But if I think in this ecosystem, the way you talk about Craigzo, all those things are eliminated. There is a platform. You can talk to this person and you can expect a reply from them. The people are here to support you. It's a different kind of an assurance, you know?
It is. See, no matter what, who says, we can always act as a catalyst. We can see, I can always bring the right resource, what you need at the time of your convenience as a founder in front of you. I can help you how to talk, what to speak about, how to convey a message. I can do that for you. Or the team can do that for you, the community can do that for you. But it's at the end, it's the founder who has to take that step, who has to put that foot forward and speak up or drop in a message without worrying about will I get a reply or not.
Right.
That nobody can change. And that is something which a community kind of also is not just a community which acts as a support system for us. Again, when we were launching it, we wanted to make this differentiation because there are support communities who do all that for you. But
Mm,
then there's a community which is going to encourage and motivate you
mm,
so that today you're learning, tomorrow you're doing it yourself. You don't need to rely on other people. Rather, you'll be one of those people who's motivating the next person in line, right? So that is where when we brought that concept out, the latter one, we were seeing the founders who are coming out of universities, they were able to let go of the fear of failure and just take those necessary risks. And that's where they were all smart. Because for us, it's the mental health in a startup community as well, which kind of creates a value. Because there is
mm,
no point startup achieving that feat or a
mm,
business person achieving that feat and mentally this depressed or they're worried about 10 other things.
mm,
So
mm,
community kind of acts in that way. So
mm.
that is where we started creating that differentiation.
Right, right. And I mean, obviously, you've worked with a number of businesses, including startups and SMEs and all of those. What do you think is a common pattern between the one that succeeds to the ones that doesn't make it? Nitin, I asked this specifically because, like you said, 9 out of 10 startups do fail. And if there is that percentage of those that are making it, then there ought to be a common thread that connects them all. And would you share that with us?
There is nothing common. Every business is unique. Okay, I'm literally. I look at this question being answered in on by different professionals in different manner, and the common elements are as simple as saying persistence to not give up,
Mm,
going irrespective of n number of failures, go back and try, all of those things, right? But nobody can actually understand what is the personal side of that startup. Maybe the founder isn't well, or maybe the team isn't sticking together. Maybe they didn't get the investment on the right time, and they're just literally going financially down the drain. So there can be n numbers for failures. The three common one, if you have to literally put me the common one, I have to say for 9 or 10 startups, the first one is they have not really validated their business idea with end customers. They got an idea and they're running in the market for it. And the
mm,
second one is they don't have the right network. They don't know who to speak to, what to speak to, or even when they get these first two, they don't know how to communicate, how to even get their message across, and they lose half the people right there. And the third one is again, there is no team. You, as a founder, we look at the three things, and in any startup, we were like, okay, in a good solid core team, you need a visionary, you need a hacker, and a hustler. We always, like this is one thing I learned in my startup ventures, and these three play a crucial role. My hacker is someone who's going to build my product for me, who's going to ensure that the product, if it's a service, if it's an app, whatever it is, it gets built there, it's working brilliantly. My hustler is basically someone who's going to execute my crazy ideas as a visionary so that we're able to go forward in the market. and obviously the visionary is the founder. So we look at these three elements in a founding team. If you have these and you're still struggling, then the one question you're going to ask yourself is, what's that one thing which is stopping me or this business to get to the next milestone? Forget about the 10 or 20 hurdles you have or problems you have. Just focus on what's it one thing. And that's where you're going to realize that one thing may be a very not part of these 20, but that one thing would be this one, and you can just tackle that. The other routes will automatically open for you.
Hmm. Hmm.
So
So the
that's
next
to look
best
at.
one thing that you could do.
Yeah.
One problem that you could solve immediately. Good. And with the same breath, I also want you to share with all the businesses, startups, anybody who is watching this, if they want to connect with Craigzo, how do they do that?
You can always email it as hello@craigso.com. We have an online platform, craigso.com, where you can register. We last month we got overburdened with all the registrations which are happening, and that's why we are going to be changing invite only from registrations for now for the next 3 months, and then in the month of August 2021, we'll be launching a brand new platform, Craigso 2.0, for users to use it freely in whatever way they want to help them build that strong community. But in the meantime, we have put team members, we put community managers, brand ambassadors in place, from universities to corporates to SMEs, to tackle that overload of requests we are getting for connections, to network, to part of the events, part of the big events with like Dubai World Trade Center we are part of. So everything. So feel free to drop us an email. And I don't know how, but the marketing team of Craigslist has taken to a next level where they've opened the community elements on all social media. So you can just drop us a message on Instagram, LinkedIn, or Facebook, wherever whatever works, and the team will reply and get back to you within minutes.
That is amazing. I hope everybody watching will be able to do that when they need it. And I want to slightly switch gears and talk a little bit about the pulse of the industry, Nitin. Particularly, I mean, last year by this time when the pandemic was intense across the globe, it seemed like the startup world was slowly crumbling, like it was in very shaky
Yeah.
grounds. But now, in the past 1 or 2 months, when the pandemic is still there, at least in half of the world and in one of the biggest economies and all, there is like millions and millions and millions of money being poured into it, and there is unicorns after unicorns after unicorns coming up every month. What's happening? What do you think about this trend? Is it going to go on in an increasing curve like this, or do you see a danger coming? What is it? What's happening?
I don't see a danger coming or anything of that sort. It's quite interesting because, say, it's the Old Testaments which gets proved again and again that in the difficult of the times, an idea is born, right? And then it's the persistence of a man which takes it forward. I'm not trying to preach out there, but I'm just looking at the scenario. COVID hit, right? If I look at if I just put across the world, if I put in a proper timeline, what exactly happened in the startup ecosystem, it's very simple for me to explain. In the first 6 months when the pandemic started, companies started failing left to right. So there were people were dropping. The failure rate was very high. Businesses were being shut down. There was no revenue coming in. It was difficult to operate, pay salaries, even afford to hire interns or whatever it is. And the businesses who were able to adapt to market scenarios quickly started changing their initial business model, how they're tackling customers, what they're providing. Companies who were only delivering food started delivering groceries to pharmacies. They adapted to what the customer needs and used the same model which they have to actually leverage it. If you look at the boom in edutech, so in the next 6 months after in the pandemic was literally this, that the founders, existing businesses learned in the first 6 months and they adapted really quick. They saw what is needed. Hey, schools are getting shut down, classes needs to go. Let's create a platform. Zoom saw a huge rise in 2020, right? This happened. Companies who were doing basic web development and digital marketing actually turned towards creating digitalization. So they started working with local companies to take everything of their concept into a digital world, helping them in different ways. And the next 6 months of the pandemic were just this. And as soon as the first wave ended, entrepreneurs learned, new entrepreneurs who wanted to start an idea saw the market, and that's why they started coming up with new ideas. So if you were talking about the biggest economy right now in India, also if you look at it, there was 7 unicorns in the past 1 month. In recently in month of April, so I think last week also there were two other unicorns who came up.
Mm-hmm.
$260 billion was invested in India alone, and $180 billion was from an outside market, and that's where you actually get to look at that the world is paying attention. So people who are able to adapt to that, they will grow. People who are not able to adapt to the market will not be able to grow, and that's something we learned. We were
Mm.
like, oh, we need to get our tech sorted, because when we look at was the one thing Craigslist is struggling at, we had a tech team, but there were still few areas we were like, okay, this is something we're going to do next year. This is something we're going to do 6 months from now. And the moment, because we were doing physical things in the beginning, and the
Mm.
moment pandemic, we were like, shit, we got to take every single aspect of this online. The
Mm-hmm.
tech team was burdened left and right, and touch wood, they were able to do a beautiful job where mentor sessions are happening online. You
Yeah.
can chat. There were other things which we launched,
Right.
and yeah, you got to adapt. Otherwise,
Right.
there's no second chance. Sorry, well, there's no excuses. Like
Mm.
I will listen to your excuses. Team will listen. Your advisors will listen, but the market will not. The market is
Mm.
ruthless, Vanity.
Right.
One thing we know is the market is ruthless. They
Right.
don't care.
Yeah. Yeah,
So yeah.
and you spoke about two interesting things here. One is businesses venturing out into the edtech segment, and the other is businesses learning to adopt to technology pretty quick. And you, I think, quoted Kregzo itself as an example of a company which had to get on its feet and get all the applications in place. Can you give us a full picture of what happened within the community? Did one business get to learn from the other? Which apps to go with? How to make a use of them all in a productive way, and all of those kind of things.
Specifically on Craigslist, you mean?
Um, on Craigzo, and particularly with the community, did the community get to learn from one another?
Oh, definitely. This was a time where it was panic all across, and community managers were the parties who were responsible to ensure that the members don't panic, and they rather learn from each other. So we were hearing people complain left, right, and center. I don't know what's happening. This, that. Products are failing. I've spent so much on product development or this, and if it was ready 6 months before today, I would be in a situation. And that's where community members came with solutions, not that, hey, have you tried this kind of a thing, but also look at 1, 2, 3. You have to do these 1, 2, 3 first. And
Mm-hmm.
in terms of advice, in terms of which platform to go for, do I go for Zoom? Do I go for Skype? Do I go for Microsoft Teams? What works best? And also, when it came to something we saw interesting was on cryptocurrency. There was a boom in cryptocurrency. The Bitcoin skyrocketed to 50,000. Now it's again dropped. People were worrying about where they can buy, where they can put in, things like that. So community members were coming across not just from a particular industry, but also from the different geographical locations, because each geography was affected in a different manner. So how Craigslist works is we have 37 communities, and a user gets to be part of bare minimum three of these. And if you're part of the community, then the information which is coming to you is relevant to that community. So if you're not interested in food tech, there's nobody speaking about food tech around you. If you're interested in AI, then every conversation around you is about AI and other things. And that's where communities started not just come up with solutions, but actually help communities which are in food tech and they're not part of.
Mm-hmm.
They started leveraging these aspects. That's what we saw in Craigslist. That's what we saw globally as well in the market.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Beautiful. Beautiful. And coming back to the edtech side of things itself, Nitin, we know edtech was a mega trend, is a mega trend, and it's probably going to be a mega trend for at least the next 5 to 10 years. And we have some of the biggest existing role players here in this segment. There are enough of them. But I know, as with any other industry, edtech can also go through a lot of innovations and new things could come up. Where in this edtech do you personally find there is scope for more innovations and more players to therefore come and chip in?
Uh, Personally, what I have seen is, or I personally believe is, that the academic system across the globe needs to change, right? I do find essential to know about the history and all that stuff, but I also look at a student and I'm like, if that student is not interested to learn about chemistry, why is he studying chemistry? Right? I wasn't interested to know anything about chemistry, and I have no idea about how or where it has helped me till date. But more important, coming on that aspect, what I feel is that students needs to be taught more in terms of how to gain that financial literacy at an early stage, how to be financially independent, how to think innovatively. Because if I look at a child, that's someone who is creative, who's a creator for me. The imagination is subpar anything. You put a problem in front of them, they will have a beautiful solution in any way or the format. To drawing to
Yeah.
this is a beautiful imagination. And when the same kids go through a system of schools and everything else, which is definitely relevant, but because of the way system is designed, they kind of start losing that creativity and get into that workforce manner. So I think in the education system, we need to include the elements of entrepreneurship, innovation, creativeness at an early stage from high school or middle school level all the way till the university. So you don't lose that innocence of creation as you grow up. And more importantly, you need to understand that as a creator, how can I still be financially independent? Because a lot of the problem with this is the 23, 24-year-old kids, uh, either they don't know how to be financially dependent, or they don't know how to invest in things like that, or how to save money, or there's a next segment which is doing amazingly. They're creating videos, they're leveraging the next tech, and our micro influencers now are making money, and they're on a different angle altogether. But they're doing what they love to do. So I think that needs to be adapted in an education system.
Right, right. And do you see any innovations in terms of new business players coming in?
Yeah. Okay, the majority of that was purely, I wouldn't name any companies, but
Hmm.
the majority of that was purely to tackle the instant problem of taking classes online, providing courses online and things like that. But then there are players who came in the market even before COVID who actually went in tangent that, hey, you're an engineer, but you want to learn about financial things. So these are the courses you can adapt to. I think I can name for you an academy and Udemy and all those things were there, right? But now there are one of the interesting things Craigzo is doing also is on the edtech sector. We're creating entrepreneur ecosystem within universities, which is not tackling only 30 founders or two founders or three founders, but tackling the entire 2,000 students and building the ecosystem within the university. So like this, there are a couple of people who are building communities in the universities or in school level to help them gain jobs or things like that, but there is still a scope for a lot to happen.
Right,
There's
right.
still a scope, and there are elements which people need to look at. And the only response you can actually get is by speaking to the students. Hey, what
Mm,
do you want?
mm.
Otherwise, it's just going to repeat the same thing.
Right, right, right. And in a way, that the community that you build within schools and colleges, they would all make for the explorers in Craigso's community, or is that a separate category for college and school students?
No, obviously these three segments stays with when we work with universities and schools as well. But
Hmm.
most of them are explorers, right, as you mentioned. But few of them are also creators who have an idea. If you look at now, the early stage founders are mostly between the age group of 19 to 25, and they're doing amazingly well because they're able to learn faster.
Right.
And when we look at the community in the university, one of the questions we always ask is, imagine if there are 2,000 people in the world. There are 100 or 200 founders or entrepreneurs. Let's say there are 20 or 30 mentors or investors. If I just break it down, what of the 1,700 people out there? And if you
Mm.
have a business and you have a service, who are you going to sell it to eventually? The
Right,
remaining 1,700, right? So when
right,
we
right.
build a community, we include the 1,700 as part of it. And they're the
Mm.
one who are very active because
Mm.
they're not just there to ask a problem or solution. They're also there to learn. They're also there to share. They find an
Mm.
article. They feel the community needs to know about it. They see an
Mm.
innovation. We've seen people sharing innovation which is happening in Germany on a
Mm.
platform in Dubai, in somewhere like, hey, you want to start something as a dentist, want to start a business, look
Mm.
at this, there's a startup over there. You book a session, the van comes to you, your entire appointment goes within the van. and people
Mm.
started taking these concepts and applying in different fields. So yeah, that is
Right.
something we look forward to more and more.
That's amazing. And we have some of the questions that are coming in from social media, Nitin. Let me see what this is. Okay. What is the biggest challenge that startup face? I think we covered that. Would you want to go over that once again?
Yeah, okay. So it varies from startup to startup, but one of the biggest thing what founders come and say is the lack of investment, and but more importantly, it's also that they don't have the right team members at an early stage. So it also looks at the early stage of a startup and the growth stage of a startup. In early stage, they're not able to secure the investment the right time as they need it. But more importantly, they're more concerned about not having the right team members which can actually do the task they need to do. And at a growth stage, they more look at is the market adaptability. How can they secure? I think the investment for startups is, I think, it's a constant track, but it again varies from a stage of a startup to the founders, the market, and things like that.
Right.
So yeah.
Yeah. And another one is how do I, as a business, leverage out of my existing customers or leverage from my existing customers?
Speak to them. Understand out of your 10 customers or out of your 1,000 customers, which one of them actually need your services, and start providing that. Because one of the biggest things we fail at or businesses fail at is actually speaking to customers. We keep looking at launching the next product, next product, next product, but we don't speak to them. Most of the times, what I have seen as a business consultant in the past as well, the clients I was serving, I was doing information security projects for them, and I was like, and I was speaking to CFO, and the CFO is not interested in IT. They're more interested in numbers. So my questions would turn. I wouldn't have to speak to them, hey, you need to
Mm,
upgrade your servers or things like that. My question to a CFO would have been, hey, the oil market has been impacted. How is
mm,
the steel manufacturing getting impacted because of that market? Is it or is
mm,
it not? And
mm,
then they start speaking numbers, and then I plug in numbers, and I'm like, okay, so that's where I start realizing they also need projects or things in different variations. So can my company resolve it? Can my company provide it? Or do I know someone in my business who can do these work? And I started making connections that way. So it became easier. So speak to your customers, understand what they need, and listen. Don't go with the proper thing, maybe make a Q&A kind of a thing, but listen to what they're saying and look
mm.
at the common trend before you
Right.
launch your next product or anything.
Right, right. And how do you reach and talk to your customer is a whole other question. But yes, that totally makes sense. Try and talk to them and they'll give you the answers. There is one more from Shalia, and she asks, what is that one point that gives you the confidence that your business will now sustain? That's a question.
Validation.
Yeah.
Validation.
Mm,
Whenever I start or whenever the startups on our platform start their business, day one, they start working on an idea, they speak to customers. Day one.
mm,
They're still working on their app. They're still working on their product. They're still working on the product, on the business model,
mm,
everything. They're doing marketing. All of that is still going on. But the
mm,
first thing they do is actually speak to customers, and that's when they start to understand that what I'm creating is something people need or people want. Okay, or
right,
is it good to have, or is it something which they need to have? And
mm,
out of the 1,000 people I'm speaking to or I'm looking at, how many of them are willing to pay for the service or product I'm providing, and how much are they willing to pay for it? That gives me immense confidence that despite no matter what an advisor says, what someone who doesn't understand the business says, what an investor says, there is a potential to grow and this will grow. That
mm,
fills me up with confidence, that fills startups with confidence because they know that, hey, even if I build this cover or whatever it is, there are 100 people who are willing to pay $10 or $5 for it. So
mm.
that is instant revenue I'm looking at. So
Right,
that
right.
is something which gives you immense confidence.
So in a way, we would ask Shalia to quickly connect herself to an ecosystem, a startup ecosystem. It could be Kregzo too. And
It can be anyone.
I think we're getting to the end of our session, Nitin. But before I let you go, I know that you have worked with some of the mentors who have been an inspiration for yourself. But I do know that a lot of entrepreneurs take inspiration from the books that they need because not all of us get to talk to the mentors in person, talk to our heroes in person. Books kind of start to do that for us. Is there any book of yours which you would like to share with us that has helped you tremendously?
There are few. You should- Okay, there
Enough.
is "Crushing It" by Gary Vee.
Mhm, mhm.
I'm not sure if I can. There is another one. I think I have to tap into my ebooks for it, but
Sure.
I've quite a few.
Crushing
There is
Gary
"Building
is
a
one.
Startup That Matters." This is
Uh-huh.
by Tim O'Reilly.
Uh-huh.
Okay. It actually this is one of the books which I've read in a very early stage. It kind of helps you to start thinking
Mm,
of like a true entrepreneur, not just creating something because you want to be an entrepreneur, but actually creating something which makes an impact and business startup that matters. There is Zero to One by Peter Thiel. It's
mm.
again another amazing one. So yeah, these are the top three I could think of right now.
That's tremendous, Nitin. It was so valuable, and I love this conversation. Thank you so much for your time. And what you're doing to the society, to the business ecosystem itself is awesome. And I hope more businesses will be able to benefit themselves by connecting themselves to any community or an ecosystem or to Craigzo itself. Thank you so much for your time. I hope to talk to you again.
Thank you for having me. Take care, guys. See ya.
Pleasure
Bye.
is ours. Bye bye.